Should nothing of our efforts stand, no legacy survive, unless the Lord does raise the house in vain, its builders strive. To you who boast tomorrow's gain, tell me, what is your life? A mist that vanishes at dawn, all glory be to Christ.
Welcome to the Open Bible Podcast. I'm Pastor Jeremy, and along with Ethan Jones, we've been going through the book of Proverbs, one chapter at a time. We're over halfway through, and we're grateful that you've joined with us. And today, we're in Proverbs chapter 17. So far, we've seen how true wisdom is living by faith according to God's character and order. And while subscribing to this wisdom has a particular shape, not subscribing to it, not applying it, has a particular shape as well. And how does Proverbs describe this alternative? Well, Proverbs describes it as foolishness, the way of the fool, folly. When I think of foolishness, I typically think of egregious behavior, like the guy who had to comply to the court order to give his wife half of everything he owed. So he literally cut everything in half. His couch, his table, his bed. That kind of foolishness is easy to spot, right? But most foolishness, living according to and for oneself with disregard to God, is much more subtle. And chapter 17 gives a good overall description of what a fool looks like, how they live. So listen for how the fool is described as we read Proverbs chapter 17. Better is a dry morsel with quiet than a house full of feasting with strife. A servant who deals wisely will rule over a son who acts shamefully, and will share the inheritance as one of the brothers. The crucible is for silver, and the furnace is for gold, and the Lord tests hearts. An evildoer listens to wicked lips, and a liar gives ear to a mischievous tongue. Whoever mocks the poor insults his maker. He who is glad at calamity will not go unpunished. Grandchildren are the crown of the aged, and the glory of children is their fathers. Fine speech is not becoming to a fool, still less is false speech to a prince. A bribe is like a magic stone in the eyes of the one who gives it. Wherever he turns, he prospers. Whoever covers an offense seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates close friends. A rebuke goes deeper into a man of understanding than 100 blows into a fool. An evil man seeks only rebellion, and a cruel messenger will be sent against him. Let a man meet a she-bear robbed of her cubs rather than a fool in his folly. If anyone returns evil for good, evil will not depart from his house. The beginning of strife is like letting out water, so quit before the quarrel breaks out. He who justifies the wicked and he who condemns the righteous are both alike an abomination to the Lord. Why should a fool have money in his hand to buy wisdom when he has no sense? A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. One who lacks sense gives a pledge and puts up security in the presence of his neighbor. Whoever loves transgression loves strife, and he who makes his door high seeks destruction. A man of crooked heart does not discover good, and one with a dishonest tongue falls into calamity. He who sires a fool gets himself sorrow, and the father of a fool has no joy. A joyful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. The wicked accepts a bribe in secret to pervert the ways of justice. The discerning sets his face towards wisdom, but the eyes of a fool are on the ends of the earth. A foolish son is a grief to his father, and bitterness to her who bore him. To impose a fine on a righteous man is not good, nor to strike the noble for their uprightness. Whoever restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding. Even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent. Here are some of the characteristics of a fool that we find in this chapter. Verse 5, he mocks the poor. He's glad at calamity. In verse 8, he accepts and relies on bribes. In verse 9, he repeats a matter, sort of gossip. In verse 11, he seeks rebellion. Verse 12, he's dangerous to others. Verse 13, he returns evil for good. Verse 15, he justifies the wicked and condemns the righteous. Verse 18, he gives out pledges. And verse 20, he has a dishonest tongue. Verse 21, he brings about foolish children. In verse 25, he's a grief to their parents. It's quite the list, isn't it? And while it's not comprehensive, it should give us pause when it comes to evaluating our own lives. I want to focus briefly on three aspects of foolishness that we see specifically in verses 7 through 9. A fool lies, a fool bribes, and a fool gossips. Fine speech is not becoming to a fool, still less is false speech to a prince. A bribe is like a magic stone in the eyes of the one who gives it. Wherever he turns, he prospers. Whoever covers an offense seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates close friends. Lying can at times seem so innocent, a slight twisting or embellishment of the truth. It is good to be reminded that this is in the character of Satan, the father of lies, and not God. While bribery might seem to provide initial success with depraved officials, like we have in verse 8, it doesn't fool God, as verse 23 reminds us. This is to pervert justice, and again, it's not the character of Christ. And thirdly, we have gossip. He who repeats a matter separates close friends. This is not just any matter. The parallel in the first half of the verse is an offense. So this is gossiping about someone else's sin, repeating it to others. Whose sin have you repeated to others recently? Who have you rolled your eyes about or shared some head shaking over? Do you know what this does? It destroys community. It threatens a community already under threat by sin. All of the fool's action is destructive to more than himself. But listen to the alternative to gossip. Whoever covers an offense seeks love. This is the reserved speech of a friend. It is not ignoring sin or sweeping it under the rug. It's not sharing sin with whom it need not be shared. And this is loving not only for the individual in sin, but it is loving for the community, protecting it. You know, my wife and I share everything. She is my closest confidant and friend. But as I shepherd and walk with others in their struggle with sin and sanctification, there are things my wife doesn't need to know. Things that would only hinder how she relates with others. See, the goal of love is to build one another up, to have them experience forgiveness and reconciliation. And gossip destroys that possibility. It is to exacerbate the problem. I like how the author will put it in chapter 19 through 11. Good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense. It is our glory to overlook it. Let us pray for the Spirit to cultivate Christ-like character within us, and not the character of this world. Rather, to alert us when we are tempted to lie, to avoid justice, and to gossip. and even more so to ask for forgiveness when we do. Let us not play the fool by His grace, and go in peace today.